Oh, hello there, and thanks for joining Uncomplicated Math today. Today we're going to be looking at how to order fractions with different denominators. And by the end of this video, you'll know the steps involved in ordering fractions with different denominators. So let's get started. So in question number 1, we're being asked to order 4 fractions from least to greatest. But the problem is, as you can see, these fractions all have a different denominator, so we can't properly compare them in order to put them in order from least to greatest. So as we can see here on the right-hand side under our steps involved, the first step is to find a common denominator. And if you're unsure of how to find a common denominator, then I encourage you to pause this video and take a look at some of the video links in the description below where we go over this topic in a lot more detail. So coming back to our first step of finding a common denominator, we can see here that we have the denominators 3, 6, 4, and 12. And we know that a common multiple of 3, 6, and 4 is 12. So we're going to use the common denominator of 12 for step number 2. And in step number 2, we're going to rewrite the fractions with the common denominator we found in step number 1. So in order for us to get the denominator of 12 for our first fraction, 1/3, we needed to multiply the denominator of 3 by 4. So in order to keep this fraction equivalent, we need to do the same thing for the numerator up top. So we're going to multiply 1 times 4, which gives us 4. Now we're going to do the same thing for our next fraction. We needed to multiply 6 times 2 in order to get the denominator of 12. So we need to do the same thing for our numerator up top. And 4 times 2 gives us 8. Now for the next fraction, we had to multiply 4 times 3 to get 12. So we need to do the same thing for our numerator up top. And 2 times 3 gives us 6. Now we don't actually have to do anything with our last fraction here because it already has a denominator of 12. So now that we've rewritten these fractions with a common denominator, we can move on to step number 3, which is to put the fractions in order. And in question number 1, we were being asked to order the fractions from least to greatest. So our first fraction is going to be the fraction with the smallest value of a numerator. And we can see here that our smallest numerator is 2. So we're going to go ahead and write our first fraction, which is 2/12. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put a line through it so we don't get confused and look for a fraction with our next smallest numerator. And we can see here that our next smallest numerator is 4. So we're going to go ahead and write the original fraction though. And the original fraction here was 1/3. We're going to put a line through that fraction so we don't get confused because next we're looking for the fraction with the next smallest value. And we can see here that the next one is 6/12. So our next fraction is going to be the original fraction of 2/4. And then lastly, we have our 8/12, which was originally 4/6. So now let's move on to question number 2 here, where we're being asked to order 4 fractions, but this time we're ordering them from greatest to least. So we'll remember that our first step is to find a common denominator. So looking at these fractions here, we can see that we have the denominators of 8, 2, 4, and 8. And when we're looking for a common multiple for these numbers, we know that a common multiple for 2 and 4 is 8. So we're going to use the common denominator of 8 for step number 2, where we're going to rewrite these fractions with a common denominator. So we know that we're going to have a common denominator of 8. And since this fraction already has a denominator of 8, we don't need to do anything to it, but we do need to rewrite this fraction here because we needed to multiply 2 times 4 in order to get our new denominator of 8. So we need to do the same thing for our numerator up top. And when we multiply 1 times 4, we get 4. So now let's do the same thing for our next fraction. And we needed to multiply 4 times 2 in order to get our new denominator of 8. So we need to do the same thing to our numerator up top. And 3 times 2 gives us 6. And again, we don't have to change our last fraction here because it already has our common denominator. So now that we've rewritten these fractions with a common denominator, we can go ahead and put these fractions in proper order. But this time, we're ordering them from greatest to least. So we're going to start out with our first fraction being the fraction that has the largest numerator. And we can see here that our fraction with the largest numerator is 6/8. But the original fraction for this was 3/4. So now we're going to go ahead and put a line through that fraction so we're not confused. And now we're looking for our next largest numerator, which in this case happens to be 5/8, which is just the way that it was written originally. So we don't need to really do anything there. So we're still going to put a line through it so we're not confused. And now our next largest numerator is 4/8, which was originally written as 1/2. So we're going to go ahead and write 1/2 for that fraction. And lastly, the fraction with the smallest numerator is 3/8. So hopefully by now you understand the steps involved in how to order fractions with different denominators. Help make math less complicated by smashing those like and subscribe buttons. As always, enjoy today's math journey.